Do 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 do.
Welcome to the Red Bean Podcast, the New Orleans edition. This is your host, Mr. Toad.
And I'm Dr. Frog.
We're going to be talking about the H-1B visa, I would say kind of fiasco / time bomb. I don't have a real name for this episode.
I think those are not necessarily pejoratives, but those are just shocking words. They get headlines for views.
So one of the big things I've been hearing a lot is one of the things that some people have been pushing against Trump recently, who is now going to become our new president on January 20th,
yeah.
which is just around the corner as of the time of this recording. One of the things he's been saying, at least Elon and Vivek have been saying, is that they're very supportive of this H-1B visa program, but there are some people who are really concerned about the H-1B program because they're afraid that this is going to be given over to maybe foreigners, maybe from India or China, and taken away from Americans. I'm just curious, Dr. Frog. It seems like you have some more information on this particular topic. Yeah. What are your thoughts about this idea of hiring foreign workers to come in when we already have some people that can do the job?
Well, the thing is, this isn't a new topic. I mean, everyone's going to say, oh, this is shocking just because it's now reached the media cycle. But H-1B visas have been around for a long time. It's a temporary work visa. It's granted by the U.S. Citizens and Immigration Services, or USCIS, and it's for people who work in specialty occupations. So the images that people get of immigration and people challenging jobs, a lot of times it's in very unspecialized ways or on massive amounts of people coming over. But, the thing is, Congress sets an annual cap of the number of visa and allows exceptions in some cases. But really, there have been only, at least in the mid-2010s, it was something like 60,000 visas were allowed, with an additional 20,000 for foreign graduates of U.S. universities with advanced degrees. And so, this is something that's been around for a while. There's, of course, regulations around wages. So this isn't an example of offshoring where to lower costs, you're just getting cheaper labor. You have to pay them at least 90% of the average salary for the occupation. So this isn't a way for a company to get cheaper labor and replace Americans from American jobs. This is a way to get specialized technical workers in those positions. And you see a lot of this in IT and computer programming and system analyst jobs as well. But basically, I guess, okay, so on one side of the argument, we're giving lots of degrees out every year. Not giving degrees out, they're being earned, of course.
Yes.
And an estimated, the stat's old, but, almost 150,000 CS graduates each year. But the jobs have only increased by, 50 to 53,000 over the last decade. So you have more supply than demand. And the worry is, why are we bringing in specialists instead of, honestly, if you're running a company, you have to decide this, and I'm just going to focus on IT for the sake of simplicity.
Yeah.
But you have to decide, is the software I'm going to use for my company, is it easier to build it in-house, which takes a lot of time and effort, or just get a third-party company to come in and use software as a service, where you pay a smaller cost, but you get a much better product up front. And that's kind of what the wrestling is with now. Do we want to compete at a high level, as Elon is going to advocate, immediately,
sure,
or do we invest the time and energy in our own local, groups to build them up to be able to compete internationally? And you see this sometimes in a soccer team. Do you go with the veteran for the 1-year contract that's going to cost a lot, but he'll make a direct, like Messi going to Miami for MLS, right?
Sure.
Do you want someone who's going to make you an instant contender for the title this year? He's going to be a bit expensive, but he has a lot of experience, and he's going to be great. Or would you instead invest that in training facilities and a bunch of 19, 20-year-olds who aren't going to produce like Messi, but you're looking at the 5-10 year timeline down the road.
I guess the area where I would say maybe a little pushback from what I'm hearing from people out there on the internet, and I think Better Bachelor even brought this up, was he was basically saying that he used to be a tech worker, and one of the things that he ended up running into, because we're just going to stick with tech, we're not going to go in other industries, because there's other industries that are also impacted by the H-1B program. But this is one of the things he kept talking about, was that there would be these Indians or maybe Chinese nationalists that would come in, and he would train these people, and they would essentially take his job, and they would take over as his position, and the only difference mainly was they would be paid a little bit less than what he is. I know you were showing that the disparity of how much, showing that wasn't that much.
Legally, it's supposed to be 95%, but you can make exceptions.
You can make exceptions to make it lower cost, so you can pay them less money to the same work that someone may have spent many years in college for, and then their job's replaced by a foreigner.
So, for example, companies can obtain an exemption if 15% or more of their workers are on H-1B visas, and the H-1B workers are paid greater than $60,000.
Yes.
But otherwise, companies have to declare that they will not displace American workers.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are ways around that.
I'm sure there's ways around it. One of the things I would say is, according to The Hill, Senator Bernie Sanders calls for H-1B reform, and he says Elon Musk is wrong. One of the things he was saying was that Sanders, who has long argued for raising wages for workers in the U.S., criticized the wealthy tech entrepreneur elevation of the foreign visa system, arguing that it further enriches a handful of the nation's richest people. Elon Musk is wrong, the self-proclaimed Democratic Socialist wrote in a statement released on Thursday, which he promoted on Musk's platform. The main function of the H-1B visa program is not to hire the best and the brightest, but rather to replace good-paying American jobs with low-wage, indentured servants from abroad. He wrote, the cheaper the labor they hire, the more money the billionaires make. Musk and Trump appear to be currently in alignment on the benefits of hiring individuals with specific technical capabilities from countries like India, arguing that there is a shortage of U.S. natives with similar skills. The program is popular with technology businesses, which uses H-1B visas to help scalp their companies, often more inexpensively. But it's come under fire in recent weeks, especially among Trump's own working-class supporters base, who largely share the position that Sanders articulated in his statement.
That makes sense. I mean, what Bernie Sanders says makes sense if you were talking about outsourcing. And outsourcing, of course, is this business arrangement where the company will contract out their services to an outside organization that has this expertise for maybe some specific function. Maybe, for example, you won't do all of your enterprise resource planning through them, but you'll do HR through a third party company, or you'll have your data storage through a system, or maybe software as service or something. But this is to lower cost, keep the firm staff in that competitive range instead of overpaying for some of those services. But that's true with outsourcing. With the H-1B, the idea isn't. So I agree with Sanders, but especially because the pay has to be within a certain percentage of the average salary, that argument that we're just getting much cheaper labor to come in kind of falls flat.
And that's kind of where the crux of the situation.
Yeah.
One of the things the Vermont senator mentioned at Musk was if there's really a shortage, this is what the senator says, if there's really a shortage of skilled tech workers in America, why did Tesla lay off over 7,500 American workers this year? The other aspect is, I believe it was Boeing. They're going to be laying off 2,000 Americans.
That's recent.
And that's going to be recent, and they're going to hire 1,000 Indian workers, paying them $9 an hour.
Was that from the Hill?
For coding. I believe that was either the Hill or another publication. But one of the things that I took away from that story was that if we are in fact trying to, I guess one of the things I've always heard is that H-1B is this idea that we're going to try and find this unique worker, an Albert Einstein, or maybe the best person at engineering. And the reason we're bringing them in is because we just can't seem to find someone of that equal value of workmanship. And what I'm starting to see here is it seems like companies are kind of using this to maybe find workers that will be working for less money, one of the things I've said to some people, and I don't know if you would agree with this, but I think if the H-1B is going to be palpable for maybe the MAGA followers, Make America Great Again, there's a lot of people who are kind of against this idea of the H-1B. I would say maybe for companies to move forward in the future with something like this, maybe for every H-1B person you hire, maybe you hire 10 Americans or 5 Americans.
Something like
or something where.
You know what? I don't think.
What are your thoughts?
I think that's still not going to be appetizing to both sides of the argument. I'll offer a solution, and this is one where I thought of what's a win for both sides of the argument. So one is we need the best and brightest, and especially in emergency situations, we need temporary staffing where they come in because there's a need and it's not being met, so we don't have time to build this bullpen of experts domestically, right? So that's a need. How do we meet that? And then also the other side of the argument, which is not taking American jobs.
Yeah.
That can be long and stable and lasting. So currently the H-1B visa holders have, I believe, ongoing up to 6 years of employment. One way to maybe solve this, and again, this is just off the top of my head, is for employee releasing laws maybe around, so let's say there's professional employment organizations, PEOs, that sort of contract these independent contractors with them, these visas. Maybe we just have regulations on the employment leasing to where it's no more than 6 months or something like that.
Or a year.
So
or something.
You can get those experts. You can get those Albert Einsteins.
Yeah.
But it's going to be on a short-term project
basis.
Yeah, unless you can justify it for another half a year, whatever the
maybe the project's not finished
but
yet.
Make it needs-based. But if you have these 6-year-long renewable things, now it's suddenly, these are long-term employment things that might be taking away long-term employment for American workers. But if you have those needs being met short-term, there's also training opportunities to train up people to replace. It sounds odd to say bring in an expert to train the people that aren't experts on how to replace the job that the expert's coming in to do. But I think that would be a nice medium. So you can expand the number of visas that way, but make it a much shorter limit to where it's only going to be needs-based on a project.
And one of the pushback,
that's one suggestion.
I would say one pushback I have, at least with the companies, is often you hear when they're hiring H-1B workers, they keep saying, we do not have the qualified workers here in the United States. And my pushback against these companies would be, in that case, if we did do what I was mentioning, where you hire one H-1B, you have to hire 5 or maybe 3 or 10 Americans per H-1B, what I would say is, maybe this is an opportunity for companies to start working with local community colleges and have a Microsoft certified or college or something like that, where you can say, if you go to this university, you can get trained to become Microsoft certified, Google certified. So then you take this program, and so in the event they're going to hire a bunch of H-1B visa people, then they can start hiring Americans who've gone through these programs, and they're going to be well-trained. They're going to be on day one. They're going to be able to walk.
They're going to be effective day one, more effective.
Day one.
So, that's the thing. If they do a needs assessment and say, hey, we're noticing that recent graduates in programming can't program when they come into the office, and they're not going to be an effective full-stack developer for years, then something like, what skills are they lacking? And let's communicate that to maybe those universities and community colleges so they can, give opportunities for certifications in addition to their own training, or incorporate those gaps in what they're teaching.
Yeah.
So it's not just conceptual knowledge, but maybe some hands-on experience, virtual labs, for example.
Or even better, I would even say a little step further would be, right now, there are certain products I'm very interested in right now. They have these augmented reality glasses. They wear these glasses, and Meta has been working on this for a while. How amazing would it be if you went into one of these programs and you took the Meta certification, and all of a sudden, as you're taking the certification, they just started mailing these glasses to these colleges. You would be one of the first people to get hands-on training. So the minute you're done with the program, if they need developers, if they need someone to work specifically on these projects, you're going to have that experience.
More internship opportunities, I think, would solve that. The one pushback I give to certifications, too, is that it's changing so fast.
Yeah.
I mean, think of something like blockchain technology. 5 years ago, there wasn't a need for understanding what that was, right? for if you were in a collegiate setting. But I think, pairing real world experience opportunities with, or maybe even getting an internship if you're still in school. You see this with healthcare, right? So they need professionals who are, let's say, doctors, right, to be 100% day one.
Yeah.
So what do? Well, you go through medical school, but you have 3 years residency and 3 years internship as well, in addition to the board certification. Now, IT, there's definitely boards like IEEE.
Yeah.
And
C++.
Well, no. That's a programming language.
Programming language, yeah.
Yeah, that's not a certification. But you have places like CompTIA that hand out certifications like Security Plus, Network Plus, Cloud Plus. But IEEE, they'll have these standards of conduct, and maybe linking up with professional organizations within your industry. Like if you're in IT, linking up with local professional organizations will help. And just bridging that gap between real world work experience, the university learning experience, and the professional groups is probably what's going to be best for building up our bench of capable transitions from student workers to workers, students to student workers to workers.
My main concern, I would say, if this is to continue forward, if we're going to increase more H-1B workers coming here, I'm concerned that this might tell students of the future, maybe I shouldn't major in engineering.
It's a little bit like, do you remember the opening to Major Payne?
Yes.
Where he had like, it was
the guy that got
buddy.
injured, yeah.
Well, yeah, the guy had like his leg blown off or something. They did a.
And he breaks his guy. He's like, oh, the pain.
Take the pain off the leg, the severe leg injury. You break the finger.
Yeah.
And then your mind is distracted. This might be an example of, we have a leg missing in one part of our industry, but doing this, breaking the finger, on the other hand, isn't going to make, it might make one problem, ease up a bit, but it's creating another problem that still hurts if your hand's broken, or your fingers break, right?
Like I said, my biggest concern would be if in the future, because essentially what I've heard is by 2030, I believe the United States is saying we need at least have 300,000 engineers in this country, I guess, to keep proceeding forward.
Now, like 130 graduates every year at least, and that was 10 years ago.
But we need 300,000, and I think...
Yeah, we can do that in a year and a half by 2030.
I hope so, but one of the concerns I have is that if we have these programs, and so basically I would think there's three alternatives. Sometimes when I hear about engineering, I hear three scenarios. I hear one scenario where you get the amazing job, you have 7 kids, and you send them all to Harvard. Wonderful story. You make $200,000 or $300,000 a year.
Oh yeah.
You live in a big mansion, all that great stuff. Story 2 is something I hear very often. I work in IT. I've been there for a couple of years. My replacement Sadiq just came in. I'm training him on everything I know, and then I'm out the door without a job, and I'm in my mid-40s and mid-50s, and then getting a job might be even more difficult. Scenario 3, I graduate, I never really land a solid position, and I'm selling sound systems at Best Buy, and that's kind of my career.
In the back parking lot.
In the back parking lot, exactly.
So on my lunch break.
But that's a scary idea, is that you're going to spend all this time in school, or you're going to spend all this time in training, and then there may not be a good job for you out there. And I guess that's a concern for some people, is that you're putting all this time and effort, and is the foreign worker just going to replace me?
Well, here's what I'm wondering about succession planning, too. Because a lot of these companies, they seem to be short-term profit-focused if their problem is an influx of demand or a shortage of supply in these things. Think of a football team, a good football team. I'll just pick a random one.
Sure.
Ohio State's doing pretty well.
Yeah.
They've outscored, at least in the last 2 games, 62-0 their opponents in the first quarter. But let's just say Ohio State, compared to a small school like Nichols State in Louisiana. All right. So, if one player gets injured, their second stringer is ready to step in and do the job. If they get injured, their third stringer is ready to come in and do the job. If they're injured, their fourth stringer or someone from another position can get reassigned.
Yeah.
And so that flexibility for that company is going to do very well on the football field, so to speak.
It sounds like
an example, Cardale Jones in 2015 coming in as the third stringer and lighting up Wisconsin 59-0, right? Enough of the football analogies too much. But what I'm really saying is these companies need to think about not just the needs now, but what's their staffing needs in 5 years?
Yeah.
What can they do to prepare for that need in 5 years?
It sounds like we need better planning. It sounds like in business schools, maybe a curriculum that they need to really start incorporating more into it, not just cutting costs and trying to sell you something, but how do we create an interchangeable workforce where you have someone that has knowledge in coding, then you have someone who does IT troubleshooting, then you have someone who does network security. Is there a way you can kind of blend these people together or have them backwards compatible? So maybe when the company's going to downsize, maybe instead of losing your job, you're just getting transferred to a different department.
Well, and again, it sounds scary to say, a non-American is coming in and taking American opportunities. I'll give some examples, though. One of my friends, he was at, I think, Johns Hopkins.
Okay.
Outside of Baltimore area, I think. And, it was in the 1930s or 40s.
Okay.
And Bertrand Russell was visiting from Cambridge.
Okay.
And, built Russellian logic as a philosopher.
Okay.
Bertrand Russell, also famous for the Russell's paradox and stuff. And he gave some lectures. And those students of philosophy at Johns Hopkins loved that you could have a visiting lecturer and interact with them and meet with them on campus and learn from them and stuff. And that's going to make us stronger.
Yeah.
But you could easily frame it as, well, we could have had an American that stands up there and lectures on the same topic. But it's not quite the same when you're looking at highly specialized subjects.
I think maybe the reason why that might be a little different is that person you were mentioning it, maybe because of their background, and plus you said they had their own paradox theory or their own, was it?
They developed the modern system of logic that they're using. The Zumela-Franco Russellian logic.
I guess my concern, like I was saying ultimately, and a lot of people
Those
are
were the Problems in Philosophy. Great textbook. Anyway, sorry.
I guess everyone's main concern is this idea that you're going to be replaced by a foreign worker, or maybe you're going to get an advanced degree and you're going to have to train for your replacement. I would say if Trump wants to take on this new responsibility as becoming the president again, as he will be in January 20th, I think one of the things he needs to really talk to his followers and maybe the hardliners in his movement is that there has to be some level of job security where it's like if they're going to fire anybody, it should be the foreign worker, then the American.
So, still preference for
the American worker, because I think the issue I have, at least from my perspective, is if we start getting rid of more and more of our U.S. tech workers or engineers or something like that, future generations are going to be less likely to get in engineering because they're just going to say, what can I do? And I get replaced from my job and I can't get another one.
Yeah.
And I spent all this time and years in school and studying and training and everything else. So I kind of feel like it's hard to become an engineer. IT is very difficult.
Yeah.
And if you make it so that people are being tossed out of their jobs or not, they don't have some type of job security, people are less likely to be doing it.
If it's short-term profit, it's never going to work out well.
Sure. And I think this idea of having some security.
Large layoffs and large hirings, to me, shows a lack of leadership and a lack of planning than it does some necessity. Or what it shows is mismanagement. So, for example, when Elon went into X, Twitter fired 80% of certain divisions.
And
that showed how poorly managed it was beforehand. But I don't think this is, saying, oh, well, we just have to change the number that to meet the great need when there is a great need. What that tells me is, we can still be bad at managing and planning, and then just still have an out card for meeting the demand if the supply is low. But as you mentioned, the supply seems to be overly high.
Yeah.
And if someone who gets a university degree is told, hey, you're not really qualified for anything, then what is that saying about our own intentionality between what we're learning and what's going to be applicable to the profession related to what we're learning.
This kind of reminds me of a book called Bullshit Jobs.
Oh boy.
By David Graeber. And David Graeber,
yeah.
This is a theory, is a 2018 book by anthropologist David Graeber that postulates the existence of meaningless jobs and analyzes their societal harm.
Mm-hmm.
He contends that over half of societal work is pointless and becomes psychologically destructive when paired with a work ethic and that associates work with self-worth. So I think for some people, the reason why they find this idea of being maybe replaced from your job, or maybe you're doing a meaningless job, but you need to do it, maybe there's this idea that my self-worth is connected to my job that I'm working on. And I guess for him, he's basically saying, at least theoretically wise, is that he's saying that a lot of these jobs are quite meaningless. One of the aspects of the book, he says, is more than half of societal work is pointless, both large and small parts of jobs, and 5 types of entirely pointless jobs. Goes into stuff like he's saying goons who act to harm or deceive others on behalf of their employers. He talks about lobbyists, corporate lawyers, telemarketers, public relations. One of the things I would say is I don't think IT is a useless job, or I think engineering is a useless job. What I am saying is that maybe when companies are hiring all these people, just like the Twitter situation where Elon Musk basically fired 80% of the employees there, and he was still able to get the company running smoothly. What this tells us is that, just like you were saying, it's a mismanaged company. Maybe leadership really needs new leadership, or leadership needs new training.
Well, and what that 80% also reminds me of is the Pareto principle. So it's also known as the 80-20 rule, and that's that 80% of the outcomes come from 20% of the causes. So maybe he identified the 20% of the workers that made the organization run. And it's named after Vilfredo Pareto, an Italian economist and philosopher who made that observation. But it's used in anything from project planning to different ways of motivating high-achieving performers and leadership models. This idea is used a lot. And I guess when you think of it that way, you want to have a couple veterans on your soccer team.
Yeah.
You want to have the Messi there. Even if you have to bring them in from Barcelona or wherever, or PSG at the time, to Miami, you want a Messi on your team. But you also want the 19, 20-year-old U.S. stars playing around them. So in terms of the domestic league MLS supporting the National League US's performance internationally. So I look at this as you want a mix of both. It's whenever someone makes this false dichotomy saying we should have it or we shouldn't have it, I always think of a third option.
Yeah.
Yes, have it, but. Yes, but is a great way to think of it.
One thing I would also
have it, but does it need to be 6 years ongoing? Could it be more temporary? And maybe this is around employment leasing laws.
This also kind of reminds me of what's going on currently with the Ukraine war between Russia and Ukraine. One of the big takeaways that I've been kind of following with this war is that recently there are these types of missiles. I believe they're called the Stinger missiles. These must be an older model. The issue is some of these older rockets were very effective against the Russians. The downside is a lot of these engineers who had designed these rockets are in nursing homes. And the thing is that we're running out of these rockets. So now the State Department has had to go to nursing homes, find some of these people, bring them out of retirement.
Really?
Teach young people how to make these new rockets.
Wow.
Here's the downside. If we don't create an environment where you have knowledge being passed from the veteran to the new person or the rookie coming into the field, I feel like there's a massive disconnect. We really need to promote this idea of that if you have the older, the more experienced Massey player, that person should be able to share as much knowledge so that whenever Massey or the old engineer retires, they have that knowledge, they have that skill set. I would also like to mention here, I'm looking this on Wikipedia, is work as a source of virtue is a recent idea. In fact, work was disdained by the aristocrats in classical times, but inverted as in virtue is through then radical philosophers like John Locke. So this idea of the virtue of through suffering justified the toils of the working class as a noble thing. And so one could argue that bullshit jobs justify contemporary patterns of living, that the pains of dull work are suitably justifications for the ability to fulfill consumers' desires, and that the fulfilling those desires could be considered as the reward for suffering through pointless work in contemporary society.
I really like Robert Moore's work on John Locke when he mentions a lot on property. So Locke, of course, thought that we had natural God-given rights, life, liberty, and property, which Thomas Jefferson later took and said life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, because he didn't want the U.S. to seem as materialistic back then. But the idea of property is you get what you've worked on. So when you toil away and plant the seeds and you grow them yourself, those are your plants because you've put in the work for them.
Your ownership.
Yeah, and so I think that's where sometimes you see this with Midwest Protestant work ethic, this idea of suffering is okay. You know, if you say you stayed up for 3 days straight and finished a project, but you had to go to the hospital afterwards and you barely survived, people say, there you go, good job finishing the work, right? There's a little bit of machismo in there too. But you know what? Speaking of the Stinger missile, you know, a lot of Americans have been working on Stinger missiles against Russian Hind-D helicopters since 1998.
Oh, wow.
By training with Metal Gear Solid. Solid Snake, a Heinz-D. What's the Russian gunship doing in Alaska?
I do like this idea.
A lot of American kids have been training in Alaska with Stinger missiles and Heinz-Ds. At least I know I have since I was a kid.
I will say this, at least when it comes to video games, that I think it's amazing that the modern gamer could be considered the modern warrior of today. When you think about the Ukraine war and Russia going on, you're seeing drones. Yeah, and you have to have...
Ender's Game is becoming more real. Ender's Game is.
It's like the controllers for these drones, they're like PlayStation remotes. They have Xbox remotes piling these things. And if you're good at hand dexterity, you could be a lethal warrior.
I remember seeing the connection in the year 2000 when SOCOM was first released.
Okay.
It was... Actually, they worked with the Navy SEALs to develop this game. It was used as a recruiting tool. Join the Navy, and they made realistic military missions in the game where you had to sit in the grass for 20 minutes until the patrol passes before you crawl past and stuff. I love SOCOM as a game. Of course, it got a bit ridiculous in multiplayer. You just throw the grenades across the maps. 1 through 4 were probably the best. But, you know, SOCOM was great. But that's when I really started to see, like, okay, they're not only just using realistic... You know, in boot camp, they have to simulate, you know, live rounds for you during your training.
Yep.
But a lot of these kids, they've actually been recording live rounds and using them in some of the video games, so you've heard it blasting in your ear for all of your Call of Duty game nights, right? And so I think there's a lot of there's a lot of guns in the U.S. and there's a lot of people who've been get used to the idea of guns and how to use them and things like this.
I'll never forget this one game. It was actually developed by the Army, and it was actually an Army first-person shooter. Here's the downside with this one. I remember sitting there playing it. I was like, oh, man, this is so cool. And I had my old Dell computer.
Dell.
And as I'm sitting here playing the game, and I remember as you first get in the game, they're kind of like, oh, before you can go out shooting stuff, you have to go through first aid. So there was like a point where I'm sitting in the game and like, I just want to go out there and start shooting. But no, you have to sit through this class and learn about first aid and everything else. Then after you're done with then you can go out and shoot people. But you have to go through the class.
And you got to ace the quiz on first aid after your tour.
After my first tour of duty.
Yeah. Come back and say, hey, do you remember the 200 bones in the body?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
We're going to kind of get back to the H-1B now that we're kind of off topic here a little bit. But one thing I would definitely say is this is definitely a contentious topic. I think this is going to be something people are going to be debating about for many years. But I do like some of the ideas that we've thrown out there. The idea that maybe we can create better training programs so that we can have the employees that these companies are looking for.
A lot of it, I think, is lead with compassion, humanity, and look for the win-win-win. There's especially if you go to media outlets, there's always going to be a narrative that pits one side against
the other.
You're either, for this or for that, and then they demonize the opposition. I think the best One is the one that addresses the broken finger as well as the missing leg, using the major pain analogy, and one that can find a good balance in the middle where we're meeting those technical expertise needs while at the same time respecting the American domestic economy.
I like this idea, too, about having an interchangeable employee where instead of being laid off, maybe they can just transfer to a different department. Maybe they have the skill for coding.
Retooling,
Retooling, so you're always being adaptable.
Yeah, we have a marketplace of talent.
I feel like we have excellent colleges here in the United States that are training people to be excellent workers. I'm sure if these people were given an opportunity, and just like we were talking about, maybe specialized training.
Link up the needs of these organizations with the universities. If the complaints are the people that are coming out of these programs aren't prepared, why? Don't just say they aren't prepared and hand wave and then go buy Messi for your Miami team. Say, how can we get some veterans but get some some work where everyone can grow and
also this idea that we're going for long-term growth. We're going for long-term stability. And I really feel that if companies are going to start hiring large groups of people, what are you going to do when the economy goes down? Is your first response to let them go? Or maybe you want to create new products that amaze your customers. Maybe instead of cutting costs where you're firing people and then hiring people for maybe at a lesser wage, maybe there's an opportunity where you can take these experienced workers, give them the kind of challenges that can really push their abilities and create amazing products that us average consumers would like to buy.
Well, and more what I see, and I'm a little bit pessimistic, so many of our tools, like let's just say the smartphone, we're seeing incremental innovations.
Yeah.
The iPhone 16 compared to the iPhone 1.
Sure,
it's faster, it stores more, it's getting better, but you can make a phone call on it. You can store music on it. You can access the internet on it. You can download apps on it. It's essentially, it's made great jumps in the last 18 years, but, incrementally. Well, what was it, 07 to, 18 years or so. Yeah, and so really think about the needs.
Yeah.
Do you need to have substantial innovation all the time? Saying innovation doesn't necessarily distinguish in terms of innovation management, whether it's incremental innovation or substantial. Some industries, maybe there is a substantial innovation going on, and they really have the needs for these technical experts. But oftentimes it's just incremental.
One of the things I do like about the company Apple, and specifically in this case, is that Apple has figured out a way to create amazing products, but they've actually created their own pricing structure. Mm-hmm. One of the things I've been amazed with is their ARM chips. Well, one thing that's amazing is that for the Mac Mini, for like $600 or $700, you have a powerhouse, but it doesn't have that much RAM and it doesn't have that much memory. But the minute you start going for more RAM and more memory, the price starts to skyrocket a little bit.
What's the base, like 250 gigabytes? Is that the minimum now? I know a lot of MacBook Pros have like 1 terabyte, or 500 gigabytes is the lowest you can get. I remember the Air Mac years ago, almost a decade ago, the lowest you could get was like 125 gigs. But I think 250 is the lowest now. We'll find it out.
We're just pulling it up right now.
Apple. I mean, they make a consistent product. I think
for $599.
$599, really,
which is incredible because you're getting 16 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of SSD, which is not great.
256 of SSD storage. So I was right. I thought it was 250.
A lot of people get like an external drive or something like that. One of the reasons why we're bringing up Apple in this particular this case is that Apple has figured out how to create an amazing product that's desirable for the public at a reasonable price. And I think for most people, $599 for a brand new computer is wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, you're going to have to get an external hard drive to add some more memory to it.
You have to buy your own monitor.
You have to buy your own monitor and keyboard. You have to have those kind of things. But one of the things I would say is that they've created an entry point. And I feel like if the job market, if these big companies want to really hold on to employees or maybe sell new products to customers, you kind of have to look at that entry point, the biggest bang for the buck, And I think that if they can increase the sales, they can support the workers they just recently hired. They don't have to do as many layoffs, and we don't necessarily have to hire thousands of Indians. No. And if we are going to hire thousands of Indians, how about we sell some products over in India then in that specific marketplace?
Or have some sort of deal or
a deal where
with their work
with their workforce and everything else. We
just to make sure that everyone's treated humanely is a big thing as well.
That's the key right there. And we're not going to necessarily give a rating because this is kind of us ranting about H1B.
It's not a movie review. It
It's
sounds
not
like
a movie review.
it'll be a movie in 20 years probably.
Exactly.
They always make movies on different time periods.
Like the Big Short, for example, from the 2008 crisis. They have a whole movie on that.
But there's a big crisis on this. I don't think this is a crisis compared to any other year. I think the same problems in industry are popping up. I think this newer Trump administration
is going to be facing a new challenge.
I think if you're a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail.
Yep.
And this is the problem-solving group. They made a lot of, we're going to solve America's problems, and so let's address everything that we can. I'm interested to see what kind of solutions come up, and as long as everyone is treated humanely.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that I'm well attuned to for any solution that we come up with.
Sure. I guess my concern overall is just the well-being of the American worker. I don't want people to feel like they shouldn't go to engineering because they feel like their job is easily replaceable.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we do have to consider there needs to be some level of job security. And the only thing I would kind of mention is I feel like if there was an unlimited amount of H-1Bs, which that's not the case, but if it was an unlimited amount, I would almost consider that almost like you're driving a car down the highway and you're going like 200 miles an hour, and there's going to be some impact for that. And I think
maybe there's a percentage system. I think in Japan, to have foreign workers, there's a certain percentage that a company can have. But I think they almost like a reverse of a quota. They say you can't have more than a specific percentage instead of you have to meet a certain percentage.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering what other countries have done in terms of their immigration policies, because we can learn from others' mistakes in the past as well.
Sure. I think this is a wonderful question to ask our audience and if you can put this in the comment section, is what do you think about the H-1B program?
Yeah.
What is your experience with other countries in their ability to transfer employees and foreign workers into a new country? And how do they approach this kind of unique problem?
Is it exciting or scary? Exciting because we're going to solve one problem, or scary because it might cause others?
That is
or exacerbate it.
Or exacerbate it. And I would say overall for companies in the future, consider better management style, maybe making better training. One of the things I would love to see more companies do is apprenticeships, training their employees.
Yeah.
What do they want out of these employees?
Mm-hmm.
Why are companies constantly saying we don't have the talented workers that we need in this country? And if we don't have those talented people, how can the colleges and universities be of help?
Those needs,
meet those needs.
And what all companies should consider, as well as all of our listeners, is to hit that like button.
That's right.
If you haven't considered that yet, and maybe subscribe, maybe leave a comment below. But we're really interested in your thoughts.
Excellent. So please like and subscribe. This is your host, Mr. Toad.
And I'm Dr. Frog.
We'll talk to you guys later.
Take care.
Have a good one.